As you know, we previously made two videos. In World History 1 and 2, we discussed what humanity did from 600,000 years ago up until the year 0. But how does Christianity emerge after 0 in this video? How does Jesus, Christ, and subsequently Christianity spread? Why are the Jews leaving the land of Palestine today and then returning? We will talk about it later, of course. Also, does Game of Thrones really exist? We will discuss all of these. Moreover, it won't stop there. Each video has a theme. The theme of this video is Rome. So the next video, the 4th chapter, will be about the rise of Islam. This video will cover the period from 0 to 600. After 600, we will discuss the rise of Islam. I apologize for my voice in this video. Right now I have no voice at all. We boosted it in the editing. It might not sound very good. Please bear with me. Let's see. What happened in the first 600 years of history? Welcome. In fact, this history goes back before 0 to BC. There are those who confuse the designation of the era after 0 with the birth of Jesus Christ. It is assumed that Jesus Christ was born between 6 and 2 BC. Now, keep in mind that everything I say about Christianity in this video is information I have gathered from as many sources as possible and have made an average assessment. Therefore, Christians who are watching us, please kindly write below if I make any mistakes, as others will read it too. Just as there are different views, sects, and beliefs in Islam, there are also many different perspectives in Christianity. Just as I do not allow sectarian or Christianity propaganda or Islamic propaganda, I will not allow such comments in the comment section either. Let me state that I will block that information. Meanwhile, the story of before Christ and after Christ emerged in the 1570s. Pope Gregory VIII adopts the Gregorian calendar and designates January 1st as exactly 0. January 1st is chosen as the beginning of the era. Well, before the Gregorian calendar, January 1st had been celebrated as New Year's Day in Rome since 153 BC in the Julian calendar. We will delve into the story of the calendar later. The winter solstice on December 25th is this and that. But our topic here is Rome, the rise of Rome. Where did we leave Rome? In the second video of World History 2. Mark Antony had last fled to Egypt with Cleopatra. Octavian went there and captured them, and they committed suicide. Afterward, Octavian was granted the title of Augustus, the supreme mega-emperor, in 27 BC, leaving us right there. We are talking about Augustus for the period after Christ. Don't think he couldn't find enemies. He fought against the Germans. Throughout Roman history, he would fight the most against the Germans, and to some extent against the Persians and the Iranian side. The war with the Germans was wearing him down significantly. He died in the year 14. His son Tiberius succeeded him. The second emperor of Rome, don't get bored. Rome is really very interesting. As I said, we will connect it to Game of Thrones shortly. This is a person who incredibly loves his father. He goes and immediately builds temples and other things for Augustus. He does most of this for the missiles in Rome. He adores Tiberius's father. Tiberius's power comes from the army. Throughout history, some individuals have utilized the army very effectively, such as Napoleon and Hitler. But at the same time, there is a ruler in China named Wang Meng. In fact, he is a military commander. Later, he becomes the emperor. He also draws power from the army in Tiberius. Tiberius uses the army in Rome, targeting the Praetorian Guard and his private army, so effectively that when the Senate attempts to establish a republic, he immediately takes control of everything. And he spends the years between 14 and 37 without any issues. In 37, Tiberius goes. He died. When he dies, he designates two heirs to ensure a guarantee for his succession. One is Gemellus, the other is Caligula. They have names like Pepe's cow, but Caligula is a paranoid lunatic. He immediately gets rid of Gemellus and becomes the sole ruler of the throne. But he is so paranoid, he is always afraid of dying. You will see two people. One is Nero, the paranoid one. The other is this. He is quickly having those around him, like Ceneple, taken away, because he is afraid of everyone. In 49, he enters Britain. The Romans are obsessed with conquering Britain. Let me tell you, where is the place we call Britain? Not just England, the whole island, because there is the Gal community there, and then there is Ireland, which will emerge later, and so on. But whatever happens to this man, whatever happens to this magnificent emperor of Rome, when it comes to the shores of Britain, he tells the army to gather seashells. There are many accounts here. I've heard that seashells were used as money in the world, but the unfortunate truth is that the man has lost his grip due to paranoia. Is the army retreating without taking Britain? They are planning to send the army within 1 to 2 years after returning to the palace. It's crazy, you see. No one wants to hold on to a madman. Now, our main story is Rome, but don't forget this madman. Let's put Rome aside for a moment, because we need to bring in China and Jesus Christ. The situation in China is completely different. In China, between 1 BC and 6 AD, there was a ruler named Pingdi. But someone named Weng Meng is also managing the army and the government, so he is both the prime minister and, at the same time, the head of the entire army, not just the land forces. Think of it this way, because during those years, China was trading a lot by sea. Throughout its history, China has made a huge amount of money in 2 ways. The Silk Road, which you know is now being made into its technological version, the Belt and Road Initiative. The second is maritime trade. I had previously told you how England got people high by selling opium to China via sea routes, and how England later entered the Opium Wars. But our topic is different. This Weng Meng girl is immediately married off to Pingdi with the emperor. Interestingly, after a while the emperor also dies. Weng Meng then says, well, since the throne is vacant, I might as well sit on it for a bit, and he takes the throne. Now, up to this Pingdi in China, it was more like that, of the Western people, of the aristocracy. If you look at the map of China today, you will see that the coasts are much richer compared to the interior, which is poorer. At that time, the government in China is actually passing to the people. Wang Meng is very good at leveraging the power of this populace. He gains the support of both the army and the people. Therefore, new currency is immediately minted. Immediately, the sale of slaves is banned. Everything in China begins to improve. But it's not that beautiful. Because if you let the people be this free, I will actually explain to you why China has come to this state today in history. In the year 23s, there is a bit of hunger, and the rivers are overflowing. The Chinese people are rebelling. The peasants are rising up. There is an uprising. Will there be a civil war in about 5 years? China is in turmoil. This means that if the administration always passes to the public in this way, then a problem can arise, because we had seen this in Egypt before history. Now, I will take you to the land of Canaan, to the city of Canaan. Where is this? Actually, this is present-day Palestine. The issue in Palestine is that it belonged to the Jews in ancient times. Then it falls into the hands of the people of Palestine. Later, the Jews recapture it again. However, in the 20s, the Jews return to their Jewish kingdoms there. They are very knowledgeable about trade in that tiny place. On one hand, they are becoming wealthy through maritime trade, but the main issue is the Jews. In the meantime, I will make a separate video about Judaism and the Jewish people. Many people confuse Judaism with the Jewish identity. But the various beliefs of the Jews strengthened Rome's, which at that time still adhered to pagan beliefs. Rome's attention is drawn to the area they govern, and they are disturbed by the Jews. During these years, a very important figure emerges on the historical stage. This figure is significant for Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. In Islam, we call him the Prophet Yahya. However, Christians and Jews refer to him as John the Baptist. Why John the Baptist? Because he is the one who baptized Jesus Christ. The people in that region, namely the Jews before Christianity, and those who had faith, greatly enjoyed John's teachings and conversations. The belief there shapes it, and one of those who shows and supports Jesus Christ, introducing him as a prophet, is this Jesus. It is John the Baptist. We call him the Prophet John. Do you know where we see these three? In Hagia Sophia. When you visit Hagia Sophia, you will see the mosaics currently displayed on the screen in the Eastern Roman art section on the west wall of the South Gallery. On the right, you see Ioannis Promodorus, that is John the Baptist. On the left, the Virgin Mary, and in the center, Jesus Christ. Do you know what is depicted in this mosaic? It features John the Baptist and Mary. Humanity is pleading with Jesus Christ for forgiveness on the day of judgment, according to the Bible, Jesus Christ. He is the one who heralds the coming of Jesus Christ. Do you know in which river Jesus Christ was baptized? In the Jordan River. Do you know where the Jordan River is? It's that area constantly debated as the West Bank between Palestine and Israel. Now, do you understand why this region, Jerusalem and so on, is so valuable? But in fact, Jesus Christ is a carpenter from Nazareth. The person named Yahya, who presents religious teachings, delivers his sermons to the Jews and the Israelites from the 20s to the 30s. However, around 30 to 33, the education and spread of faith by Jesus, Christ begins. As you know, Christ did not live for a very long time. He has 12 apostles. But he was also betrayed by someone other than his apostles. The Roman authorities of that time captured him and crucified him. I will not create a polemic in this part because there is the event of the 13th apostle, where some Christians say that Jesus Christ rose 3 days after being crucified. Some Islamic interpretations say that he was raised to heaven, not killed, etc. This is a bit complicated, but what concerns us is this. In the 50s, Christianity spreads to Western Asia and Anatolia. Christianity begins to spread rapidly, especially Antioch, which is still a very important religious crossroads today. It becomes a center for the spread of Christianity. At that time, Emperor Nero is present. This burning, I will burn Rome. You know Nero. That man didn't burn for nothing. They are taking on his sins, but anyway, Nero is very disturbed by the spread of Christianity and is doing everything he can. When he captures such saints, he has them executed in order to quickly stop the spread of Christianity to Rome. But rest assured, what can I say? In 400 years, all of Rome becomes Christian. Remember that Jesus Christ was not present in 33. That is, he was crucified in 33. We need to understand something very well here. Now, when we examine the religion of Islam, after the 600s, we will see how the Quran spread across the world, which caliph wrote it during, which period, how written copies emerged, and so on. That's a different story. But the situation for the Bible is a bit more complicated because the book we call the Bible is, as I will explain shortly, a compilation of various letters and narratives. Therefore, Jesus Christ does not leave the world saying, "Here is the Bible," before his death. In fact, the parts I am about to explain are sensitive. In the Christian faith, those who believe in Christianity write their truths, but I want to emphasize that I have researched extensively to present this information. St. Paul, who previously persecuted Christianity and later became known as the 13th apostle, begins to spread the teachings of Jesus Christ to the world through various letters. The foundation of what we know as the Bible is laid there. He later becomes known as St. Peter. He is the one who presents the Christian concept of the Holy Trinity of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Jesus Christ assigned him the task of spreading Christianity. He was born in Tarsus. In fact, there is a place in Tarsus known as the St. Paul Well, which is a tourist attraction. At first, he is fighting against Christianity. Later, while on his way to fight Jesus Christ, he sees a vision. He says to me, "It's a hallucination now, a vision has come." And he is trying to spread Christianity. He begins to see himself as being close to a prophet after Jesus Christ. He is executed by beheading in 65 AD by Emperor Nero. Now let's return to the land of the madmen, 20 years ago. I will rewind in history because I don't want a story to be left unfinished in a full 40 years. We have briefly explained Christianity, but I will make a separate video on the history of religions. You know that Caligula, who collected those shells 20 years ago, after that Caligula went mad and was killed. Claudius took over in 41. Claudius passed and sent 24,000 to 25,000 soldiers to Britain, consisting of 4 legions, each with 6,000 soldiers. He stated they would invade Britain as soon as possible. Interestingly, they continue all the way to the present-day London exam. They are quite successful. When Claudius dies, this crazy Nero comes to power. Now, the situation with Nero is a bit complicated. He is both the stepson and son-in-law of Claudius. So, there are some complicated relationships involved. I can't explain it all right now. We also have valuable younger viewers watching us. But as soon as Nero comes to power, he starts taking extreme measures because he trusts no one. He says, "I will not make strange decisions. I will not be like the madmen before me." The Senate starts to eliminate certain individuals. They kill a person whom I never thought would have any problems. He kills his own mother and has Agrippina killed. He says that tomorrow, just in case something might happen, this is a matter of succession. It destroys instantly. In the year 64, that famous fire breaks out. On the night of July 18th, 19, a fire occurs in Rome. In this fire, the homes of those who adhere to the Christian faith are particularly suffering significant damage. They say that Nero did it on purpose, just to harm the people. Nero hears this, but instead of saying, "No way, that can't be true," he goes on to claim that he will incorporate the burned areas into his own territory, and even seize the lands of those in the Senate, saying he will build a new palace. This certainly fuels hostility against the man. Both the Christians and the Jews have driven him from his land, and of course the Roman Senate finds a bonus for the man. This Nero is quite an interesting character. Once, theater actors were considered to be of a very low class because they criticized the government of that time. But Nero would force himself to participate in theater performances, claiming that he had incredible talent. He would also make people applaud for him. Therefore, the senator cannot figure out what kind of evidence this man has. He is said to be singing songs and participating in the Olympics. In fact, he is even fighting with gladiators. There was a scene in Tosun Pasha, if you remember. They were groaning, knowing they would lose in wrestling. New jobs are coming to Turkey, but come on, there's nothing at all. Seriously, nothing at all. Gladiators intentionally lose to Nero, but the problem is that for a gladiator to lose intentionally means they die. Therefore, this man was actually enjoying butchering people. In the end, it gets so wrapped up in such expensive pleasures and building palaces that it becomes overwhelming. The fantasy of palaces has always existed in history. So, he is raising taxes. Is all of Rome rebelling against the tax increases? He is fleeing from Rome. The army, following this on the road, also abandons it. It returns to the palace and sees that the palace guards are also gone. It escapes again, returns once more, and eventually says, "Enough, I will die." It tries to commit suicide but fails at that as well. In the end, it has a friend or servant stab it in the throat. And he dies from blood loss. Nero exits the stage in cowardice. Now, while Rome is in such turmoil, they are also facing issues with the Armenians. In 59, they invade Armenia. Therefore, Rome is gaining many enemies during that period. By the year 69, Rome is in such disarray that it changes emperors 4 times in just that year. The last one to come to power becomes the permanent ruler. The most recent to ascend the throne, Vespasian, takes the throne. His first act is to plunder the Jewish temples and Jerusalem. He kills 20,000 Jews in a brutal manner. So it was actually a great massacre for that period, but it also carried all the sacred treasures and so on from there. There are several breaks in history here. It is said that some sacred, valuable, spiritual, and powerful things were also carried there. Whether you refer to those who delve into fantasy searching for the Holy Grail, or say that the story of the Holy Grail was written much later, at the end of the Middle Ages, that's not our topic here. This only serves to further inflame the hatred of these Jews. He also imposes taxes on Egypt. He dies in 79 AD, and his son, Titus, takes over. However, they say something about Titus being cursed and so on. In his second year, Mount Vesuvius erupts and a wave of ash and hot air falls over the city of Pompeii. You can see this when you visit Pompeii. I was very shocked during my visit. A volcano erupted above this city, but 25 meters of ash and hot air are falling on the people. Hot gases are pouring down. Therefore, people are burning as their bodies remain buried under this ground. And years later, archaeologists take molds of these bodies by pouring various materials into these voids. Some legends say that their bodies turned to stone. In fact, they did not, because they are extracting 13 people who took refuge in an orchard just like this. Therefore, as you can see, the very tragic states of the people are being displayed here. It is true that some bodies are found in a burnt state, but the majority are in the form of sculptures. Whatever happens, Rome completely collapses in Britain between 69 and 84. Now, Britain is also within their borders. In the meantime, I will bring you a very important story now. First, let's talk about the Great Wall of China together. The Great Wall of China was built in BC. It starts around the 400s, but in 221 BC, the kingdoms unite and strengthen the wall. Between 300 and 170 BC, they build an incredible and massive Great Wall of China. Today, the Great Wall of China is approximately 21,100 kilometers long. Look, it is 21,100 kilometers in length. It's misleading to say this 21,000 or 196 kilometers long structure can be seen from space. In fact, it cannot be seen from space. However, it is an enormous wall. Now we have arrived at the point where the video gets interesting. I said this video wouldn't be as boring as the others. Interestingly, now, the Britons. Listen very carefully here. The Britons are resisting a bit, but they are fleeing to the north. When they flee to the north, the commanders and rulers of Rome at that time say, "These Britons have fled north. Should we build a wall in Britain? Let's call it Hadrian's Wall." Hadrian's Wall is 113 kilometers long. Hadrian was the emperor of Rome around 117 AD, so it is called Hadrian's Wall. Remember, we are talking about the 110s. This wall prevented attacks from the north for 40 years. Attacks from the north. Now there is an interesting similarity here, very interesting, because it is said that I will now explain all the similarities to you. This wall is the wall in Game of Thrones. Those who watch Game of Thrones know that there is a wall in the north. Moreover, there are other similarities. One, as you know, there are 7 kingdoms in Game of Thrones. In Britain, you will see that there are 7 kingdoms throughout history. You remember the character of Jon Snow in Game of Thrones, right? He is an illegitimate son. And so he is raised far away in the north. Then he tries to unite all the kingdoms. King Arthur is also raised as an illegitimate child far away. And the Round Table that unites the 7 kingdoms across Britain. You know the Night's Watch, those night watchmen. Similarly, it is said that King Arthur is actually Jon Snow, and that he was named after him. The Night Watchmen are called the Knights of the Round Table because they are also loyal to King Arthur. In fact, the author of the book, Martin, says that he took those twisted relationships in the Lannisters from mythology. Viewers of the series know Bravos. Bravos is a place that governs everything with its wealth and trade. That place is also referenced as Venice because England had various relations with Venice throughout history. It is said that Joan of Arc is present in the brine of the tartan. Therefore, it is actually incredibly true that the events of the Romans in England, including this wall, and England's relationship with Game of Thrones, are inspired by a great history. Our place is India this time. King Kanishka is quite powerful in India. He is at war with China and advances as far as Peshawar. He even conquers parts of what is now Afghanistan. And they are building a great capital in Peshawar. They remain in these lands until they are occupied by the Persians in 200. Among the societies that have survived to this day, one of the most powerful is India during that period. Now we have come to something very important. Hadrian, who commissioned this wall, is having a lot of problems with the Jews. He is particularly disturbed by their presence in the city of Canaan, which is in present-day Palestine, and by their religious practices spreading throughout the world. The Jews rise up after a certain point. They rebel in 132. They establish their own country and their own currency. But within 3 years, a large portion of the Jews are massacred. They are driving the survivors from these lands. This is when the Jews leave the lands we now call Palestine. During Hadrian's rule. In the year 135, here, we will shift a bit south of North America towards Mexico. The city of Teotihuacan, with a population of 80,000, is rising here. And the urbanization is magnificent. The sewers are magnificent. The streets are like drawn with a ruler, in a grid pattern, perfectly straight. There are many successes in gold craftsmanship, very fierce. In other words, they fight very fiercely and spread rapidly. They are so powerful that they build 2 enormous temples with the gold and other resources they acquire from everywhere. One represents the sun and the moon at one end of this grid-like square-shaped city, while the other is at the opposite end. They extend all the way down to Guatemala in the south. I am heading down to South America right away. Above South America, the Moshe culture is spreading, which will pose a threat to them in the future. These 2 cultures are always separate, but later come together, yet the Moshe culture does not take captives like Genghis Khan. They sacrifice everything they find to their gods. Christianity is spreading across the world. As you can see on the screen, it is achieving a vast expansion in a remarkably short time. This momentum continues unabated until the spread of Islam. At one point, Islam may slow down, but especially in Africa, Christianity will spread again through missionary efforts. We will see, especially between 1400 and 1600. But the spread of Christianity in the world does not occur as a single doctrine. I love explaining every word I use to you. What is a doctrine? Doctrine is a teaching with its own unique characteristics. They are dogmas. By the year 200, Christianity has alternative doctrines. It possesses alternative teachings and techniques, or rather perspectives. In fact, it intersects to such an extent that there are views suggesting that the God of the Old Testament and the God of Christianity are not the same God. So, what is the Old Testament? You also need to know what the Old Testament is. We refer to the Torah, which includes the Psalms, as the Old Testament. Even the book that Christians consider sacred contains excerpts from the Torah in its early chapters. The Holy Book, which is sacred to Christians, contains quotes from the Torah in its first section, known as the Old Testament. In the New Covenant, or as you know, new means new in our language. The section on the New Testament includes the Gospels written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, as well as compilations of the Gospels, the books of the Gospel, or the letters of Apostle Paul. So, in fact, you are looking at a compilation consisting of about 39 to 40 books. Of course, the Bible has had many different interpretations over the years until the council was convened. In the versions that have reached us, Christians will interpret it themselves. This is not the focus of the video on the history of religions. It has various forms. What concerns us is that Rome, Christianity does not like it for a long time. Because on one hand, liberation, and on the other hand, equality religion is not a good thing. By the year 175, Rome is in turmoil. The governor of Syria is rebelling, going to Egypt and declaring himself emperor there. The Arabian region at that time is also saying, I too am rebelling against Rome. There is one more place. If that place had joined in, Rome would have fallen. Anatolia. The governor of Cappadocia, the Cappadocia we know, he is not betraying Rome, because his lands possess great power that will go to Rome. And because the Cappadocia Valley did not rebel, the situation is turning around. They say that these movements also affected China. Because during similar periods, within those 5 years, 400,000 people are also occupying the capital in China. All of this is being suppressed, and there are large massacres occurring. In 200, Rome is recovering once again. They invade the Party Empire in the region of Iran. In the videos, please do not write unnecessary comments. For example, why didn't you refer to the community in that particular region as Kurds? Yes, when the time comes, we also talk about the Kurds. I have no problem with the Kurds or their history. Please do not write such strange comments. But the trouble arises until the Sasanians confront the Romans. The Sassanids do not resemble any society that came before them, and they are very brutal and will uproot Rome. In fact, the rise of the Sassanids will coincide with the fall of Rome. In 207, the Parthian kingdom in Iran is experiencing a plague and internal turmoil, leading to its division. And they say, since it is already divided in two, let's take advantage of it. But the Sassanids, the second greatest Persian empire in history, and the fourth Iranian dynasty, do not leave these lands unclaimed. And the Sassanids are taking over that region. The Sassanids are so powerful that they begin to conquer Roman territories and even advance as far as Iconium, which is present-day Konya. Rome now faces a very great power. The Sassanids, whom they underestimated, are initiating the collapse of Rome. If we go back to 220, this 400,000 people in China had marched towards the capital, and China is being divided into three. The north is divided into two parts, while the south remains a single entity. The north is shared by Wei and Shuhan, and in the south there is the Wu kingdom. An interesting event is happening in China during this period. This uprising of the people, their quest for freedom and so on, impoverishes the peasants, who then submit to the landowners. The feudal lords are also establishing special armies to protect their own territories. China is increasingly being divided into smaller pieces. This period is already referred to as the Three Kingdoms period in Chinese history. The year is 250. The Confederation of the Ancient Germans is emerging as barbarians. The barbarians are coming together and quickly advancing towards Italy. Rome is also beginning to suffer blows from the west. He is fighting both the Sassanids in the east and the barbarian confederations in the west. At this very moment, the Yamato kingdom is beginning in Japan, a place that has never made a sound until now. Remember, we will return to it later. Meanwhile, Germanic barbarians are attacking from one side, while the Sassanids are attacking from the other. Of course, Britain is not left empty. A Gallic empire is being established in Britain. First they take Britain, then they take Spain. After that, they move on to present-day West Germany and then to Gaul. And this great empire begins to erode Rome in the same way from the west. Rome starts to shrink increasingly. Until the year 300, Christianity finds some peace in Roman lands between 250 and 300. But in 300, all the temples of Christianity are burned, all the clergy are hanged, and very serious problems arise. There is a return to paganism. Paganism goes back to more ancient beliefs. It is a faith that believes in periods before older religions. But unfortunately, it also possesses a bit of ignorance. There has been a constant struggle between Christianity and paganism. The year is 293. Rome is facing so many problems now, but on the other hand, it has such vast territories, and there are always conflicts happening between the East and the West. The emperor says that these barbarian invasions, the migration of peoples and so on, are very complicated matters. I am having a lot of trouble managing this country on my own. He says to add an Augustus and a Caesar to the west, and an Augustus and a Caesar to the east. By the way, the name August comes from this. When we think of Augustus, we think of a president. It's not exact, but this simplifies. While the country is not divided by territory, it is for the first time divided by rule. They call this theotrarchy, a quadruple governance. But it doesn't go on for that long. A generation later, these four become intertwined and it goes up to Constantine the Phamsus. When Constantine the Phamsus becomes emperor, he unites them all and gets rid of all of them. The sole ruler wants to move the capital to Istanbul, which was founded by Constantine, known as Constantinople, because he prioritizes the east. During that period, he ensures the protection of this area. As the center, Istanbul begins to gain importance during that time. This Constantine is a very significant name in the history of Rome, because he is also the one who commissioned the Hagia Sophia. Meanwhile, the Hagia Sophia was not like this in its original construction. It has been greatly expanded and enlarged over the years. There is a wonderful documentary on National Geographic about how the Hagia Sophia expands all the way back to Mimar Sinan. Mimar Sinan is also working on it. In 325, he convenes a council in Nicaea. At this council, 300 Christian clergy come together to work on the Bible. In fact, the foundation of orthodoxy is being laid here, or let's say it is being solidified. I will explain this in the history of religions. The Council of Nicaea is very important, but when he died, Rome was truly divided into East and West. Because they have three heirs, the three of them share the West and the East in some way. The Western Rome, as you will see shortly, will fall in 476 due to the migration of peoples and barbarian invasions. The Eastern Rome will completely disappear from history in 1453. With the conquest of Istanbul by the year 357, the Persians had captured territory as far as Diyarbakir, reaching what is today's Diyarbakir. And without Constantine III, only one remains. That one can already govern Eastern Rome, but with great difficulty. By the year 395, Rome officially separates from everything. It transforms into two separate independent structures. In 401, barbarians invade. In 405, the Goths emerge. First they take Italy, then Germany, and then France. In 410, both Britain separates from Rome. And at the same time, the Visigoths enter Italy. They are accelerating more and more. The Goths are an important Germanic tribe in history. And the Visigoths, Vestrogoths, Ostrogoths, they are divided into Western Goths and Eastern Goths, West Vestro. We also know them as Visigoths, either as Vestogoth or Vestrogoth. Ostrogoths are referred to as Visigoths. The Visigoths and Ostrogoths are also spreading very quickly. They fight very swiftly. They are very warlike, and they are already tearing apart Rome. Don't immediately think of the Germanic tribe as the Germans. In fact, think of them as a group that emerged from Scandinavia around 2 BC. The part of continental Europe that the Romans referred to as barbaric is precisely this. When you look at the map of Europe today, for example, the French are formed from the combination of Germanic Franks and Celts, the Gauls, and the Gallians. In Normandy, there are also the Scandinavian origin Normans. The English come from Germanic origin. From the Anglo-Saxon tribes, the Dutch are descended from the Batavians. The Scandinavian race actually has Viking roots. As you will see later in history, they are the Vikings. Therefore, when I say Germanic, it means that a special video needs to be made about this. In other words, which society in history came from where? The migration of the Germanic tribes, characterized by their constant movement as different tribes and their rapid reproduction in the places they invaded, is changing the map of Europe. While looking to the west here, we also need to look to the east, because in the east, the Huns emerge in history. I will rewind history a bit. I will take you back to the year 220 BC, because Teoman is there. The great Hunnic state is established in 220 BC. I also looked a bit into what Halil will receive. I listened to the speech of Ihbar Hoxha as well, because there is a big debate, were the Huns Turkish or not, and so on. Did they have any connection? There is a significant source among scholars regarding the Turks being Huns. Therefore, there is a natural connection between the Huns and the Turks. This is because there are many historians who claim otherwise. The Huns are very powerful. I will explain the spread of the Huns in Turkish history. They are advancing by swallowing everything that comes their way, including China. The Huns become the largest empire the world has seen in that period within just 50 years. That's why it's called the Great Hun State. But unfortunately, around 156 BC, they were divided into the Northern Huns and the Southern Huns. And slowly, just before the transition, around 40 BC, they are gradually fading from the historical scene. Let's say they are being divided more accurately. While the Ostrogoths and Visigoths were pressuring Europe, the Huns emerged in 370 and began to suppress the Ostrogoths and Visigoths, the White Huns. The European Hunnic Empire. History shows Attila, the great ruler. Attila leaves the Ostrogoths and Visigoths behind, changes his strategy, and marches on Rome, capturing the city. In 452, the Pope goes to Attila and says, "Enough is enough. We have been conquered, we will surrender and pay tribute." Attila halts his advance. In fact, it was Attila who fully triggered the migration of the tribes, because he then turns and marches towards France, and the tribes in all the lands he advances into begin to migrate to different places. If you do not understand how the Huns stirred up the European Hun Empire and why these tribes constantly moved, it would be impossible. They are known in Europe as the whip of God. Therefore, the person who gradually shaped the geography and borders of Europe as we know them today is Attila. Unfortunately, he was poisoned and killed on his wedding night in 453. He was poisoned by wife, and the settlement of the European Hunnic state is slowing down here. Let's say there is a gang leader called Odoacer at the head of the Visigoths, but in fact he is their king. And it progresses quickly, warrior-like. It ends the Roman Empire in 476. It is the one that causes the fall of the Western Roman Empire. He even tells Byzantium that he is now the king of Italy and that Western Rome no longer exists in history. Western Rome is thus leaving its place to the Germanic kingdoms and the Germanic lineage. The Western Roman Empire has fallen, it no longer exists. The Eastern Roman Empire says that its capital is now Istanbul, so you can call us Byzantium. Thus, when the western part of Rome fell in 476, the eastern part was referred to as Byzantium. Turkish films are called Byzantine is this. Slowly conclude. The year 540 was a very shameful period for Rome. It is somewhat lacking in historical context. A plague outbreak begins in Egypt. This also spreads to Rome due to trade relations. The 6th and 7th centuries are marked by significant tax losses, population decline, deaths of people, the devastation of peasants, and the depletion of material wealth. The Germans, particularly the Ostrogoths, are taking over Rome. The Franks are not resting. They are capturing Rams, which is present-day Paris, by the year 570. The Byzantines have no money left. The Persians cannot pay tribute, and they declare war. The Persians also capture Syria. And a very pitiful event occurs. During this time, Houston Yavuz loses his mind and gives the last remaining money in the treasury to the Persians. They are rebelling. If the Eastern Roman army lacks funds, Eastern Rome grows chaotic. In 581, they unite north and south. Now, let's get to the point. Rome technically collapsed twice. The first was in 476 when Odoacer destroyed the Western Roman Empire, and the second was in 1473 with the fall of Istanbul. Why did it collapse? The first reason had vast territories, but do not compare the fall of Rome with that of the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire is entirely different. The common aspect of the Ottoman Empire and the two is religion, because, one way or another, Christianity also fragmented Rome. When I describe that consult to you, you will see that there are many debates surrounding it. But at the same time, what made the Ottoman Empire different was that it occasionally attempted to try out a republic and believed in the Senate, not in a single power. It experienced its strongest period during Caesar's time as Caesar was solo. Later, it became a fragmented and dispersed place. They spent money. This contributed to the disintegration of the Ottoman Empire. They paid a lot of money to the army. After a while, instead of training 50 people to fight, they bought barbarians. In fact, they paid to be removed from their own lands every time there was an invasion, and this is why the treasury was depleted very quickly. The legionnaires were not burning water, they were paying an incredible amount of money. In this video, we explored how Rome, Judaism, and various beliefs elevated and ultimately led to the downfall of Rome. This video was about Rome. In the next video, we will see the birth and spread of Islam over the next 600 years. See you in the fourth video. Let me know in the comments if you enjoy these videos. Are they fun? Should the history series continue? I am Haluk Tatar. See you in the next video.